International. I already interviewed Anna. If you could give us just one. Sure, of course. It's in Miami. We're supposed to look fit. So.
And you think Google is faking search results?
Okay, so what I wanted to ask you about was the whole situation between the Democratic Party and the Republican, how a lot of times they agree on being pro-regime change. Like when we got Hillary Clinton, she was all, let's start a war with Russia and all that. So nowadays, when I look at the candidates, I just hear Tulsi Gabbard talking about that we should just stick to what we are. Let's not invade Iran. Let's not do Venezuela, regime change. So I wanted to ask you, what do you think is up? Like, why is it that we can't have a little bit of variety in terms of foreign policy when it comes to regime change?
I think, unfortunately, as always, the money rules. And so the defense contractors want war, the oil companies want war, and they're huge donors to the politicians, mainly Republicans, but also, unfortunately, a lot of Democrats. And so when people get freed of that corporate influence, like Bernie Sanders has and some progressives have, all of a sudden they're not for war. So, the Republicans the Republican voters don't want regime changes. They don't want those wars. The Democratic voters don't want them. The only people who want them are the donors. And unfortunately, they control a huge majority of the politicians.
Now, here in South Florida, in Miami, we have historically had a huge Cuban American community that typically, regardless of their personal income, will vote for Republican all the way. And nowadays, that right-wing vote is being partially replaced, added on, with the immigrants coming in from Venezuela. And it feels, when you look at the local Hispanic channels, all they talk about, of course, is regime change. Let's get the best candidate that will invade Venezuela and possibly tighten the sanctions against Cuba. Do you think that sort of persuasion of the vote taking place in Spanish is possible to just that it could just keep Florida Republican? I mean, as progressives, don't you think that we should have like a Spanish-speaking message to the community as well?
Yeah, absolutely. Look, I don't think a single Latino should vote for Republicans in this country, especially in the era of Donald Trump. He called Latinos rapists and criminals. He's coming for your family. And what are you going to do? You're going to just sit there and take it? So I know the Cubans have a special exemption, and they get to come into this country unlike any other country and unlike any other immigrants. And since they have that unfair advantage, by the way, I'm happy that they do, but do not deny it to other people. And if you do, I got news for you. You're incredibly selfish, and you're not a good person. So if you get offended by that and you say, no, I should have the privilege, but no one else should, well, you're wrong. You're wrong. And so
why do you believe in censorship?
Okay.
When they talk about socialism, every time that the right wing Trump supporters they're always using Venezuela and Cuba as the bad example when there are just so many other countries that are capitalist and are a disaster. What kind of counter argument would you give people that every time you have a complaint about something, you just say, oh, but just look at Venezuela and Cuba, they're a disaster, so we don't want this to turn?
First of all, Cuba wasn't socialist, it was communist. And there's a huge difference, let's call it. And Venezuela was a petrostate, and it was a disaster because they ran out of oil money. It wasn't about socialism. Now, at the same time, Maduro was a mess. And just because Maduro's a mess doesn't mean that Norway or Sweden doesn't work. Socialism does work. It has worked in many different countries. But listen, all of this is nonsense. I'm a capitalist. But what I believe is the same thing that democratic socialists believe. We believe that it should be a mixed economy. Most things should be private. But some things like the fire department and public health insurance should be public. That is not extreme. That is not communism. That's the same thing. That is decency for all average Americans.
Why do you believe in censorship?
And finally, when obviously Alex Jones people are persecuting you, these people that like the rabid Trump supporter base, a lot of times it just feels that they're talking about some sort of nationalism that really, in my opinion, does not correspond to the original document of the Constitution. Because, what type of patriotism, what type of identity, yes, America exists as a strong nation. It has wonderful values and we love it here. Otherwise, we're not leaving. But don't you think... But anyways, the thing is, I saw a woman, a Trump supporter, with a huge sign saying that she'd rather be an American than be a Democrat. Don't you think this country is really struggling with this whole divide between politics, where it's just the other side isn't just another political party, where it's the enemy? Do you think we could ever heal this great political divide?
We actually can, but we got to win the war first. And so what I mean by that is, I'll explain. Yeah, no, political. So what I mean by that is, look, in reality, we're actually trying to help conservative voters. We're trying to help them with higher wages. We're trying to help them so that if their kids get sick, they get taken care of. We're trying to save the planet for their kids and grandkids and create millions of jobs. That actually does unite us. And they actually would be in favor of that if we could just get past their propaganda outlets like Fox News and all the other right-wing outlets. But in order to do that, we have to win the political war. And I am not going to go in soft like a lot of Democrats do. And please, yes, a centrist position. It's not the center of the country. It's the center of the donor class. The center of the country is actually deeply, deeply progressive. So if we fight for that, and we fight aggressively, but only politically, then we will win. And once we win, we will definitely reach out to the other side, because the point of what we're doing is not just to help people on the left, it's to help all Americans.
Precisely. So you don't think we need to turn soft? You think we need to actually radicalize the base of the Democratic Party?
For the first time in our lives, what we actually have to do is actually energize the base and say, you know what we're going to do? We're actually going to fight for you. They never fight for us. And then they are surprised when people don't show up to vote. If you fight for people, then they'll actually be motivated to come up and vote for you. It's not a radical idea. It's a very, very simple, fundamental idea.
And one last question. How outraged do you feel, because I speak for myself as well, when you hear that people like Trump, they use arguments that were traditionally arguments of the left, like when they talk about liberty and helping the working class, when they steal our language, how do you think that we can take back those concepts?
Look, that's what I mean by got to win the war first, because I'm not going to play patty cakes with these guys. What I'm going to do is say they're un-American, because they are. They don't understand the concept of this country. They don't understand that we actually believe in all publics, all citizens, and so they don't believe in our Constitution. They don't even believe in the rule of law. The guy.
Yeah, that's okay. Thanks. Wow. Well, anyways, that was a great conversation here on the go, and he was literally taken away from us. But anyways, it was kind of sad that we had such a hard time here concentrating on our improvised questions when we really could have had a very informative conversation. I think it went well. You know, considering that all of these people have
Donald goddamn Trump. He said make America great again. And guess what? Y'all thought he was racist, but he's not racist.
Anyways, so besides obviously very impassionate crowd here, we're kind of struggling here with a security detail, but I think that it all went really great, that we were able to keep our calm and just talk about the issues that I keep insisting. They're not necessarily socialist issues. They're issues that relate to us, the citizens, the people, okay? Just because we want our citizens, our residents, that's a new addition, just because we want American residents to be taken care of, just because we want people to have access to an education, to be able to compete in a worldwide labor market that expects higher qualifications, does not make us communists. It just makes us humanists, because in the end, we want to improve people's lives. And I think that this whole conversation went really well, and I hope you guys enjoyed. See you later.
See how these buildings around here? Because I'm not giving my consent. You just didn't need
It's
the
a
right
public
to speak.
space.
It is, but my body is not public. Unless I'm making some money, you can't put me on it. Now,